Hello and welcome to this video. My name's Andy Edwards, I'm a YouTuber. And on this video, I'm going to be reviewing the new album by Steven Wilson, which is called the Harmony Codex. Right, shall we start? Steven Wilson is a contemporary progressive rock musician, although some people might question whether he is a progressive rock musician, including him himself. He came to prominence in the duo No Man, which featured him with the other singer-songwriter musician Tim Bowness. He then formed a band called Porcupine Tree that became pretty successful, and he left Porcupine Tree probably about 8 or 9 years ago, and he started on a solo career. In 2015 he made an album called The Raven That Refused to Sing, which absolutely blew me away at the time and is a progressive rock album and is unbelievable. And since then he has been traversing between sort of progressive rock and a sort of contemporary sort of pop music, postmodernist ironic pop music, I think is the best way to describe it. And that brings us up to date now with this album, the Harmony Codex. Right, so before we get into it, I must state that if we go right back to the beginnings of his career and we go back to the band No Man with Tim Bowness, I'm currently drumming myself. I am drumming for Tim Bowness, all right? I will alert Tim to the fact that I've done this review, and he may well tell Steven that I've done the review, and you never know, Steven might be watching right now. So Steven, if you're watching, hello Steven, hello. And all my lovely YouTube viewers, if Steven is here, and you have to imagine he's here, but if he is, can you all say, hello Steven, hello? So the fact is, I'm very aware that he may be watching this video, right? And so, of course, that's going to deeply colour my review of the album. So what do I think of it? I think it's brilliant. I think it's really good. It's really good. There we go. That's the review there done. Steven, you happy? Did you like that? Shall we pass on? You see, I can't stop there, can I? I've got to keep going. I've got to say something, haven't I? So, you know, if life was the way that I could just come on and just go, it's really good, in like that Birmingham accent, then it would be a better place. But no, you've come to see my opinion, and you want to see me maybe either gush at how great it is or tell you how terrible it is. And somewhere in the middle, just nobody really wants that. But in the most case, music is somewhere in the middle, you know. Is this album a masterpiece? Well, I don't know. I think The Raven That Refused to Sing is a masterpiece, but perhaps we need a bit of time, you know, to travel. You know, we need to travel into the future a little bit to be able to look back and tell whether something's a masterpiece. But this is a great album, without a doubt. When I put it on, I didn't expect it to be that great. I thought, you know, Steven Wilson is exploring sort of more popular music, songwriting stuff, and I'm a hardcore proggy jazz fusion type of a guy, and I thought it won't be for me. And when it started up, that's exactly what I thought. It opens up with a track called Inclination. Now I've got some notes here, so I'm going to refer to the notes I made as I listened to it, and I'll read them out. So as I was listening to this, I wrote, opens up with a Middle Eastern flute sample and then goes into a Warp Records type electronica backing. Warp Records was a label that was very trendy, say 10, 20 years ago. I was a big fan of everything on Warp Records. And straight away, the fact that I mentioned that points us to the sort of meat of this review, because I am going to be trying to make a point about Steven Wilson on here, and I'm going to try and get deeper in it than most reviewers will do. So yeah, the first thing I want to, oh, this sounds like something on Warp Records. This trumpet comes in, but it's not a standard trumpet sound. It's this trumpet sound that sounds like John Hassell. It's like John Hassell, the late great John Hassell. was a musician that worked with Brian Eno, and he made some incredible albums. I'm also a big fan of John Hassell, and this is why I'm recognising the influences on here as we go in. It almost sounds like Mark Isham. Mark Isham is another musician I really like that made these sort of ambient, ethereal jazz rock albums. And Mark Isham is a little bit, this is really unfair because he's done some incredible albums, especially the stuff where he's mined into sort of the Miles Davis catalogue. And there's that little bit of that influence here, that little bit of awareness of Bitches Brewing in a Silent Way that we start to get. So as this track opens up, I'm picking up a lot of these things. But Mark Isham is almost like a coffee table John Hassell, you know. Is this album a coffee table album? The vocals kick in. We've got piano. You've got what sounds like programmed drums. I look at the credits and it's Pat Mastelotto, the great Pat Mastelotto. I can't recognise any sort of drumming on it. It sounds programmed. There's no problem with that. But all of this, as I'm listening to it, I'm thinking, it's all right. It's good. It's nice. It's okay. By the time we get to the end sort of, we've got this sort of rousing ending of this track. And that's the first track over. And I'm like, this is all right. And I wrote down, because I scored each track, 6 out of 10, Stephen. 6 out of 10 I'll put for that one. Yeah, bear with us, please. Right, then the next track comes in. What Life Begins. And it's almost like Stephen's gone to the other end of the thing now. He's gone from this sort of electronic-y, programmy, sort of Brian Eno-esque, Warp Records, Massive Attack, Tricky, Radiohead, Kid A, all those, that is there. Now we're into that sort of, Pink Floyd ballad world. We've certainly got real instruments. You got my mate Craig Blundell on drums. These drums sound beautiful, and he's playing just beautiful drums. That's what I want to hear. I want to hear some humans on it. Stephen Wilson's harmony vocals kick in. I love Stephen's harmony vocals. He's got a sound, and this is what starts to come out. What I really like about Stephen Wilson is certain things he does, which is his sound. And I want to try and get into what that sound is, because when he does it, and it's in those harmony vocals, it evokes something in me, right? And I think that's the key to this album, is what it evokes in me. That is why I like Steve Wilson. And I'm not going to tell you now. I'm going to go there very slowly on this video. It's probably going to end up being an hour long, especially with the coffee slurps. Proper YouTuber, you see. I'm a proper YouTuber, me. Right. It is very evocative. It's very beautiful. It's like getting into a warm bath after all that spiky, minimal, buttoned up Warp Records type electronica at the start. This beautiful dubby bass comes in. This is a great song, and it's also got those Stephen Wilson. I don't know if I should call him Steve. I don't even know if he lets people do that. But I keep wanting to call him Steve because I'm trying to be more chummy, I suppose. If he's watching, Steve, are you alright, Steve? But I shouldn't do that because I don't know Stephen Wilson, and I shouldn't be so familiar. Sorry, I do apologise for being so familiar. But I'm right inside your head. I've had that album headphones. I've had it on twice. Listen to it. I'm inside your head, Stephen. That's the thing about being an artist. He's laying it all out for us here. And what's he laying out? He's laying out something which hopefully resonates with me. And there is something with Stephen Wilson's work that resonates greatly with me. Anyway. Shall we move on and get past that? So I really like that. Very sort of standard Pink Floyd proggy, almost veering into dad rock, going almost down that meridian, maybe even Dire Straits. And I detect a Dire Straits sound in this every now and then. There's a definite point where I thought, is this Dire Straits? And Dire Straits for me represents that part of the contemporary prog scene that I really don't like. And I think it's that bit, it's the dad rock bit, and this is key to the album as well. All right, and I'm told store all this I'm saying as we go through my review, because this review is going to be far more profound than anybody else's review. I mean, I'm a proper YouTuber, I've got a white mug. I'm building. I know what I'm doing. I'm building. You know, I gave that one 7 out of 10. Oh, 7 out of 10. Andy's only gave that 7 out of 10. We said the album's really good. Where we go with this? I don't understand it. Right, next one is Economy. What's it? Economies of Scale. Right, as this starts up, I actually thought I could be listening to an outtake from Kid A by Radiohead. You know, it's this sort of Stephen Wilson ballad style, which for me owes a lot to Kate Bush. Right, Kate Bush, Warp Records, Radiohead, Kid A, Massive Attack. These are the things that come seeping through, a deep love of these influences, right? Kate Bush, The Kick Inside, Never Forever, The Dreaming, all that there, because that's a lot, that's a big range of music. All that is on this album. I can feel it sort of coming through. It's the harmonic movement that Stephen Wilson uses in his songs. It builds up to this beautiful spiraling chorus. And there's some lovely operatic vocals. That spiraling sound, which almost sounds to me like it's come from Genesis. So you see, I don't like reviewers when they say it sounds like this and it sounds like that, but I'm doing that to the max here. It's almost like part of the enjoyment for me, because remember, I'm the same age as Stephen Wilson. I think he might be a little bit older than me, or might be a bit younger than me. I don't know, but we're roughly the same age. There's an enjoyment for me spotting these influences, because these aren't the influences of your classic progressive rock person, because I'm not classic you know, I'm not a boomer. I'm a bit younger, and so Stephen, and we've got a different set of influences, and I enjoy spotting them in there, and I'm enjoying those influences. But in terms of this track, again, I've written nice but a little bit forgettable, right? Now, so the first three of these tracks, they're all very nice. I like them, but you know me, I want something to hit me in the face. I want something meaty. So I started to think, yes, it's all right. I mean, it's a good album. I'm thinking, it's a good album, yes, all right. It's not really my cup of tea. And the next track comes, and I look down, and this is a 10-minute track. Oh, what's going on here? Have we got a bit of a prog epic coming? A little 10-minuter? That's very exciting. So this next track comes in called Impossible Tightrope. There's a beautiful impressionistic string intro, and then Nate Wood's drums kicks in. Now Nate Wood was a surprise, because Nate Wood is a jazz drummer. He's involved in a whole ton of really interesting projects. So in the progressive rock world, which is really wide, we have the sort of dad rock Marillion, you know, sounds like Dire Straits at the one end, you know, and those sort of Pink Floyd 3 chords going backwards and forwards type of prog. And at the other end, there's this stuff that the proggers don't even think and listen to. They don't acknowledge it. And Nate Wood is in that bracket. He also was the teacher of Louis Cole, or Lewis Cole, depending on how I should pronounce it, because I don't know, from Noah, right? So I love all this, and all this stuff is like outside the progressive rock world, and suddenly I see Nate Wood there, and he kicks in, and he's displacing the beat. It sounds like a sort of hip hop Jack DeJohnette, that trendy drum sound, and you know this point I go, oh, this is really good. And for me, with what I like, I've liked those first three tracks. I could put the CD on in the car and I enjoy it. But suddenly now, I'm like, you know, my eyebrows are perked up. I'm like, oh my god, this is exciting. And the other thing is, up until now, everything's been a bit dreary for me, because I'm not a subtle person. I like stuff to blast my head off. I know I can do a ballad every now and then, but on the whole, I want something exciting. So I'm suddenly going, oh my god, this kicked in. This is going. It's all over the place, you know. It drops down, and we hear that Pink Floyd influence again, but this time it's a little bit earlier Pink Floyd. It's those big slash chords, it's all psychedelic, and then suddenly it comes back in, and what do we get? Jazz rock fusion. Right? It kicks in, we start getting solos, you know, improvisation. Where's the vocals? It's as though Stephen Wilson has made a claim with these first two tracks, and just as the expectation is there, he goes, right, is this what you want? And the thing about this is prog. This is jazz rock. This is all the stuff that is counter to all that popular, you know, sort of hooks and melodies and song stuff, right? But the way Stephen's doing this, it also sounds really fresh. It sounds really interesting, you know. This is way past any, you know, sort of post-Chick Clear electric band fusion that you hear. This is psychedelic and swirling and exciting. It then drops down again. It's a lot of light and shade that, you know, it drops down and we go into a beautiful choir section. And at that point, because of the sort of movement through these genres and the arrangement, I'm starting to go, this is prog. What we're listening to now is prog. And the thing with prog is once you go prog, the stuff that you went before becomes prog. This is an interesting idea that occurred to me on this album. You know, when ELP do Benny the Bouncer is not prog. But once you place it in Brain Salad Surgery, that track is prog. Because prog should allow you to do whatever you want to do, should be able to go wherever you want to go, but you do have to fulfill certain things to be allowed to do this. Right? To be allowed to do this, you've got to... And this was something that really occurred to me listening to this album, is we were always arguing, what is prog? Is this prog? Is that prog? Maybe what prog is you have to do certain things, and once you've done certain things, that gives you a card where you're allowed to do whatever you want. You know, I watched the King Crimson documentary, and I'm going to do a review of that as well. And what struck me is King Crimson is like a big rock band, you know, and they're in the pantheon along with Led Zeppelin and Deep Purple. But King Crimson could do whatever they want. They can go out on tour and they can turn up and not play any songs from their past. They could totally do whatever they want and the audience will go with them. And maybe that's what the definition of prog is. You have to do certain things, and once you do those things, it allows you to do what you want. And here on Impossible Tightrope, Steve Wilson now goes, like, I can do what I want, you see, because he's now allowed to. It's like having a prog passport. You have to do certain things, right? And he's doing them right now on this track, and I'm loving it. There's almost a Yes influence in the harmonic movement, this sort of upwards heavenly movement of stuff that's going on. And there's also the sound of gong. So listen to the influences that I'm picking up. And this is all the stuff I love, you know, Kid A, Radiohead, Massive Attack, Gong, Yes, Pink Floyd. This is the stuff that I love, right? This is it, you know, these are the influences. I've got to give a shout out to Adam Holtzman, who is such a serious soloist. You know, he's not just a good jazz guy that Stephen Wilson's got in. This guy, I mean, he's played with Miles Davis, and he has a darkness to his electric piano playing that I absolutely love. And he starts to go in onto this solo, right? And he's improvised, and it sounds as though what Stephen Wilson has done is he's gone back in and he's learnt certain parts of it, which is a technique that I've used a lot in. That's basically how I write. Everything I do is improvised. Once you do that, you create something which is both improvised, so it has that essence of jazz rock, but it is all orchestrated, so it has that essence of prog. I found this really exciting. This doesn't sound like Frank Zappa, but that approach is very Zappa-esque. I've written here, this is the best of modern prog. Incredible production, and it takes you on a journey. And right at the end, I can even hear Jan Hammer creeping in. And I said, I wish everybody would just give Jan Hammer his due. Jan Hammer is one of the real geniuses of music for the last 50 years, right? And I just don't feel he gets the credit. And in the keyboards, and I just felt it at the end of this track. So that means I love it. If I've listened to a track and at the end I'm thinking about Jan Hammer, I love it. This is 10 out of 10. This is brilliant. That's cold now. Talking, you see, I'm talking too much. So, it then goes into a track called Rock Bottom. Now, there's, is that right? Is there see, this is where my brain fails me. Is there a... Oh, I can't even remember it. I've gone, forget that. Or, you know, if I was a proper YouTuber, I'd edited that. I'm not going to go there. Right, so it starts with this sort of string section. You can't tell whether it's real or not. I'm pretty sure it's not, but it sounds like it could be real, and I like that. There's a lot of that on this album. I'm not too sure what I'm listening to, and it's in mono, right? It's mono. We need more mono. Musicians, don't be scared of mono, right? There's a guest vocalist on here, Ninette Tayeb, who is absolutely incredible. Steve Wilson comes in and mirrors her vocals. We have sort of an octave, which is very beautiful. I can remember when Stephen Wilson first came out, right early on when I was in IQ, and Porcupine Tree were just a little band that were on this sort of scene to progressive rock. And I was going around championing them to all my progressive rock friends. And a lot of people said, oh, they're all right, but I don't like Stephen's vocal, don't like Steve Wilson's vocal. And that was a thing that I think everyone's forgotten about. I think his vocals are incredible. And I think his vocals have developed as time has gone on. And on this track, the vocals are great. As I said, I love the way he layers harmony vocals. I've put this is moody and ethereal, but again, a little bit ploddy for me. There's a great vocal, but the melody, I start to lose interest. And then we get this Dave Gilmour-esque guitar solo. It sounds like Dave Gilmour, but with some jazz vocabulary. That's what it sounded like. This is all going back to that world of that dad rock thing. I wasn't so keen on this track. I mean, very well done, but I've given it 6 out of 10. Right, so I thought, oh, that's a one-off, you know, that Impossible Tightrope. I love that. Then we go into a track called Beautiful Scarecrow, and again, this is another long track. So I thought, oh, we're in for another jazz rock odyssey, you know, that's what we're into here. Starts off, it sounds like Massive Attack. Now, I would guess that Massive Attack are one of the biggest influences on Stephen Wilson that there is. Now, that's really interesting because I'm the same age as Stephen. I came up as a young progressive rock fan, and all my mates at school were listening to, you know, whatever, Tears for Fears and all that stuff, and I wasn't into that, you know. Then, at the end of the sort of, when would it be? At the end of the 1980s, right, when I was sort of coming up just at my teens, everything exploded. The music scene exploded, you know, rock music turned from sort of Bon Jovi and Cinderella into Nirvana, Soundgarden. You know, we get the Red Hot Chili Peppers, you got Fishbone. Then, you know, dance music, which had just been sort of inane techno, suddenly explodes into drum and bass, jungle. You've got like trip hop. You know, hip hop turns from sort of whistle just bugging. And then the next thing, we've got Public Enemy, NWA. It's like there was like an explosion that happened at the end of the 80s, early 2000s. And here in the UK, one of the things that came out of all that, so we picked it all up and dropped it in, was this scene of which Massive Attack represent the sort of pinnacle of it. But behind that, you had bands like Tricky, you had people like Portishead, you had people like Lamb, you had Ronnie Size, you had Goldie, you had Square Pusher, all that stuff on Warp Records. A band like Radiohead, which had come out sort of a sort of moody post-Nirvana, post-Stone Roses, you know, sort of guitar-based, you know, moany indie band. They suddenly just completely shift. OK Computer comes out and it's taking all those things in 1997 and it's pulling all those things in, that whole Massive Attack electronica thing, or Tekra, Photech, Aphex Twin, all this stuff, which is all completely different. And that started to seep into Radiohead, and Radiohead suddenly become one of the greatest progressive rock bands. Now, what's that like for me? Now, because I'm now in my early 20s, right? I've grown up in the 1980s listening to, you know, jazz rock, 70s prog, and classic rock. That's what I like. And then suddenly the contemporary music scene has gone prog, right? And I can remember going and getting Massive Attack. I heard Sly. Sly was on the... And I was like, what is this? I'm not saying it sounded like Genesis, but in its ethos, in its DNA, was something spectacular, majestic, something ethereal. It was prog. What they'd done is they'd done something that allowed them to do this. You think about the Orb. There's so many of these bands now. Because Stephen's the same age as me, for me, those bands are as prog as prog. This is prog, right? Those influences are so important. Massive Attack almost like represents that thing. I could call it the Massive Attack thing. Massive Attack what it is that Massive Attack came out of dance music, and dance music had a different commercial mediation process, right? It allowed music to come out that wouldn't have got into the mainstream before. And this is a completely separate video, so you've just got to go with me on this. I would love to explain it now, but I know I'll be here for an hour. But the point is dance music was like an injection to music scene, as the Beatles were and all that stuff in the 1960s was. And out of that, musicians, it's like as though the commercial mediation process broke down for a while. And the record company's going, well, I don't understand this. What's this dance music? I mean, they're making records in their bedroom with these big white boxy things, and then they're sticking it out on a white label, and they're getting hit records. There's no band. You know, they don't need us. They can print it on white label, just give it to like some DJ, and suddenly they get all this weird stuff. So the people are going out and they're off their heads on drugs, so they don't know what they're dancing to. And as long as it's got a beat, they seem to do whatever they want. There's this band, they just come out with a record that's like 20 minutes long, and it's gone to #1 in the charts. And there's no vocal, it's all of that is prog. And Stephen, I think, is very influenced by that experience. And I think that thing of seeing that type of music in the charts and it being successful, it gives somebody my age the idea and the hope that perhaps that could happen again. So I'm nearly there. You set that up in your mind, because I'm going to come out with something profound at the end of this video. You watch. Stephen, I'm hoping you're watching this, because I'm hoping you're going, yes, I think Andy's right. I didn't expect this. I thought we were just going to go, oh, yes, it's all right. No, I'm not. I'm building to a hypothesis here. All inspired by Stephen's album, which means it's a great album, doesn't it? Right? Even if there's tracks I don't like on there, the fact that we're now 30 minutes in and I'm nowhere near the end of what I'm going to say about this album means it's a great album, right? There's this sort of it's the Pink Floyd 3 descending chords thing. So I'm listening to this track, and that starts to wear on me, right? I'm starting to hear this, because there's these two things fighting on this album. Or there's actually three things, I think. You've got the Warp Records electronica experimentation thing, you know, and with Stephen Wilson's big long list of analog synths that he's used to make the track. There's all that there, which is sort of, this is a key. Here now I'm going to say another key. It's futuristic, but it's futuristic from somebody who's in the 90s, lived within the 1990s. It's a 1990s view of the future. It's someone born in the 70s with that space 1999 view of the future that's come to their artistic, fruition. They come to their artistic development peak in the 1990s, and there's this idea that the future will sound like Aphex Twin, right? And that's what I'm getting on here. But there's also this Pink Floyd, dad rock, Marillion thing going on, and that's what I got here. And just as I'm starting to get tired with that, as I sort of go, Stephen, you've done it again. There's a beautiful key change, right? And he starts to take me on a journey. It's almost like he's manipulated me. He's almost like he knows I'm not so keen on this, and he knows that there's another part of the audience, so that's what they want, and he's going to lose them every time he goes down the route that I want. And he's very aware of that as he's making this album, and he sort of doesn't care, right? Because it's his album. That's what I'm feeling now. He starts to take me on a journey, and that is always the definition of prog to me, when you start to take on a journey. This is why Steven Wilson is a prog musician. Steven, you are a prog musician because you do this, right? You do this, and Cardi B doesn't do this. You see, that's the difference. Cardi B never takes me on a journey, ever, right? As much as I wanted her to, and and all those albums I've listened to by her over and I go, come on, Cardi, take me on a journey, please. I'm here. I'm an English, middle-aged, middle-class, music fan. And when I saw the word Cardi, I thought, oh, that sounds great. It's like slippers, pipe, Cardi. And I bought this album thinking I was going to get, that English aesthetic embodied in maybe sort of an urban hip-hop sound. And I don't, because she never takes me on a journey. This guy does, right? We've got some lovely meaty drums on there, big sound, and then this bass kicks in. And this is what I love about progressive rock musicians. I haven't looked at the cast list on here, and I go, oh, that's Nick Beggs. Isn't that incredible? That's Nick Beggs, right? Then we have a duduk solo. A duduk is some North African, Middle Eastern fluty saxophone thing. I love a duduk solo. On my album for Bella, which I'm now pushing, I've got a fake duduk solo where I'm doing it using the old virtual instruments. Here we have a real duduk. Again, Craig Blundell has done an incredible job on here. Beautiful drumming, absolutely beautiful drumming from Craig. So I'll message Craig. So Craig might be watching this alone. So can everyone say hello to Craig? Hello, Craig. Right, shall we move on? Then we get to the Harmony Codex. This is another big epic, and it's the name of the album, and it's the name of this has got to be more important. You always think this is really more. This is where I always think when somebody has a track that's got the name of the album, that's the name of the track. This is where they now lay out what this album's about, and I think this is the case, and it's ominous. You feel that when it starts up. Because it starts off with ominous wind, right? Oh, nobody likes ominous wind, do they? As soon as you get ominous wind, as soon as there's some ominous wind, it's like, oh, could be into something really messy. This eerie melody starts up. Right, this is another area of prog, isn't it? Prog has that thing where it wants to worry you, doesn't it? It wants to worry you with fantastical ideas, and that's what we've got here, And this is, I won't go there. So I've got so much in my mind, and I'm trying to hold myself in. I'm trying to keep us on track. But I'm not on track now because we've got the ominous wind and the eerie melodies and these vaguely Genesis arpeggios, which I'm a sucker for. We all are, aren't we? And I'm saying to myself, I really like this. We're back to the prog. This is proper prog. Very nice. I like this. So I can see what Steven's doing. He's trying to educate me with some nice songwriting. So I'm going to sit down and feel like I'm a good person because I'm listening to good, solid songwriting. But really, every now and then, once he knows I'm losing interest, he's giving me the prog meat. We got the prog meat back. The voice comes in, and there's his voice over, and it's all metaphysical and deep. This Cardi B would never do this. This is something that Steve Wills going to do, and I'm thinking about time and space, and how long does it take from light to travel from the stars to here? And when I'm looking I'm looking at the past as well as looking at great distance. It's the infinite, and the infinite's profound, and the infinite is God, and all this stuff is in here. But it's very minimal. This is minimal. It's not like Impossible Tightrope. This is prog, but this is prog almost coming out of sort of Steve Reich, Philip Glass, and all that type of stuff. But it's dark, right? It almost sounds like Thomas Newman, And there's another thing. Film, I think, is so important to Steven Wilson. There's an influence that's coming from film soundtracks. I was watching The Player the other day, and I picked up that this is quite an early Thomas Newman soundtrack, and there's a certain sound there. This is what we want from our musician. We want a certain sound. Steve Wilson has his own sound, without a doubt. There's a key change. No, I'm reading the wrong one. There wasn't a key change, right? This is minimal, but the harmonic structure is feels like there's a never-ending development, and Stephen knows this, and so I'm sat there. This is spiraling and going on, and I don't want it to end. I don't want this one to end. This is incredible. I've put repetitive but beautiful. This is a brave statement, and I like it. Right? This sound is, we could describe it as almost Kubrick-esque. Stanley Kubrick. There's a filmic aspect to this, and Stephen Wilson's aesthetic is Kubrickian. I'm making up words now, you see. This track for me is Stephen Wilson at his peak. This is where I start to think this is a man of vision, right? And what I became aware of, which I've just touched on, is this idea of somebody growing up in the 70s with Blake Seven, Space 99, Captain Scarlet, and then Star Wars. And we had a vision of the future, and when we got to sort of fruition in the 90s, I'm saying the same part again, but this is very important. That music seemed to be an expression of that 70s view of the future, which it naturally would have been. And now, and this is the key, Stephen Wilson is in his 50s, like me. And the fact that he's in his 50s as a contemporary musician, this for me becomes the overwhelming viewpoint. But all Stephen Wilson's, references to popular music and the success he's got, that idea of going back into the past and then looking at where we are now, this seems to be the subject of this album to me. I'm not about the subject in terms of the lyrics. I'm not going to talk about the lyrics at all. I'm talking about what the music says to me. This is a 50-year-old guy with a set of influences that is thinking, and this is where I really get to the point here. I'll say it as from my point of view, because I have exactly the same thoughts. I grew up in an era where I was born in the rock era. I went through the punk era. We went into the 80s where we had the best pop music ever. There's that 80s pop music like Tears for Fears and Culture Club and ABC and Frank Goes to Hollywood. And that actually was proggy. This is the influence that prog had, and this was all in my DNA. And then when we had Live Aid, the music seemed sort of then suddenly turned into this corporate world, and it all went pretty horrible. And before you knew it, you had Jimmy Nail at number one, and Bon Jovi and all this stuff. And I wasn't too keen on that. And then there was an explosion, and by the 90s, you're in this incredible scene. And in the pop music in the early 90s, like the early 80s and like the early 70s, these three periods that we've gone through, was unbelievably exciting and really cool. Really cool, right? And coming up to date now, when I put the radio on, I listen to most commercial music, pop music, not all the esoteric stuff that's on Bandcamp with about 20 listeners. I know you can say, there's all that out there. But when I go and put the radio on, I'm like, this isn't cool. Do these kids know what cool is? My kids, they're all obsessed with Grease at the moment, and they're going around listening to musical theatre. This is what my kids are into. They don't seem to understand what cool is. Aphex Twin's cool, Soundgarden's cool, and so that there's that viewpoint there's an existential angst that was a prerequisite of the music that we grew up listening to, which is now being filtered through a sort of middle-aged man's view of the world. It's almost like going, this is cool, isn't it? Is it cool? I think it's cool. Do you think it's cool? I don't know, because I'm old, but I'm trying to be cool. I'm trying to be relevant. And that being cool is about being in the future. It's about being new. It's about having an edge. It's about being avant-garde. And the version of that Stephen's got is one that comes from a kid in the 70s that has grown up artistically in the 90s, exactly like me. And this is resonating with me, right? So, towards the end of this, again, I'm going to say it, Adam Holtzman kicks in the solo, and I've put, this is the X factor of this album. Adam Holtzman is like, it all turns brilliant. It's like having Alan Holdsworth on the album, you know. As soon as he kicks in, it's all brilliant for me, right? That track, again, I put 10 out of 10. That's a masterpiece track, without doubt. If the whole album was like that, I would have given the album, said it's a masterpiece. But Steven Wilson can't, because he's bound in by who he is and the times we live in, and it has to reflect the times we live in. And he's reflecting that. It is a middle-aged man's view of the contemporary pop scene. You know, it's. Shall I carry on? I'm nearly there. Next track is called Time Is Running Out. And when I thought this, and I looked at the name of that track, and I thought, yeah, this is something that's resonating with me. You know, that idea of being futuristic, of being avant-garde, of making your statements. And, you know, Steven Wilson has done that. And same with me, you know, I've formed bands, you know, and I made music. And then you get to a certain point and you go, well, it's done now, isn't it? It's done. It's done. That's it. It's like, you've got to sit back and sort of look back on your life rather than looking forward. Time is running out. It's middle-aged, middle-class, existential angst. That's what we've got here. Starts off with a piano and vocal. You know, it's got that twist in the melody that I love so much with Steven's work. It's really stripped out, which is a refreshing thing for the ears at this point after all this sort of luxurious, you know, prog abandon we've had. And this idea that I could hear all these influences, and this idea of the future as seen through somebody who grew up in the 70s. So if you've ever heard The Night Fly by Donald Fagen, it opens up with a track, and I can't remember the track. It's the one that goes, "It's a beautiful day." It could be that one. I don't, and you all will tell me, because you know, you found out you're all saying I'm not a Steely Dan. I'm a Steely fan, and I love Night Fly. And that track is someone who's grown up in the 1950s commenting on the 1980s and talking about the future that person's now in from the perspective of the future of the 1950s, which was all Invasion of the Body Snatcher, and it came from outer space, and you know, commies under the bed. It's all silver suits and silver pipes and the Jetsons, and that's that idea, which is a very modernist view of the future. Whereas me and Stephen, we grew up with a postmodernist view, which is far more dystopian and is far more filled with existential angst. It's all Terminator, isn't it? It's that type of view of the future, you know. You know, it's like what films did we have? You know, Fight Club and the Matrix. Although the Matrix seems to just have prophesized everything we're in now, doesn't it? But that's another video. I wish I could do that. Right, so I've put middle-aged existential angst replete with references to Kate Bush and Jeff Wayne. You know, so there's a sentence where he mentions The Kick Inside and War of the Worlds. And there we have it. There's him pinning not just his influences, but the subject of this album in those two tracks. Kate Bush is an example of a progressive rock musician that can do whatever she wants, but also be a huge hit, you know. And Steve Wilson would have been about 10 when Kick Inside comes out. That is what he's trying to do. That's one of the things he's trying to do with Kate Bush, you know. On the other side, we got War of the Worlds. Now, War of the Worlds was this, you know, British phenomenon of progressive rock suddenly be going mainstream, and it's filmic, and it's almost musical theatre-y. It's full on prog. And of some of my age, you know, we didn't come to prog. I came to prog through Variations by Andrew Lloyd Webber, Jeff Wayne's War of the Worlds, Sky. That's what I am. That's what Stephen is. And in those two references, we have basically who he is, right? Then we go on to the second to last track, Actual Brutal Facts. Sorry, time is running out. I thought it's great. I gave it 8 out of 10. And I was marking these harshly. I thought, I was very aware that, you know, I'm going to tell Tim Bowness about that. I don't know if he'll pass on to Stephen this, but if he does watch it, I thought, I want to give it a proper review. I want to give Stephen, I'm being serious now, I want to give Stephen the respect of me giving it a proper review and actually putting some real thought into what it made me feel like. Because I think if Stephen's watching it, I'm hoping that this is interesting to him as the person who made the album. I'm hoping that's the fact. It's a cool groove. This is very 90s idea of what is cool. You know, Stephen Wilson then comes in and he's rapping on here. And at this point I thought, oh my God, he's ruined the album. Why is he rapping for? You know, he's a middle-aged guy. He shouldn't be rapping. It's like when a middle-aged white person raps, it's never a good thing. You know, this is one of the things. Again, if he's my age, then he's probably come to rap through John Barnes's rap on that you know, World Cup song that the England football team did, and you know, that's really what our hip hop references are, aren't they? You know, that's what if you're an English middle-aged guy like me. And he's swearing on here. We got a few f words. You know, a guitar solo comes in. The guitar solo is incredible. I'm having to listen to even work out whether it is a guitar. I love that. Get some real drums on some of this. This is me, you know. So, but I really like this track. Very 90s, very 90s. Actual brutal facts. 7 out of 10. Then we get to the very final track, and it's another epic called Staircase. It's got that sort of, you know, who's next, you know, Baba O'Reilly keyboard intro, which I liked, you know, and then it kicks into another sort of massive attack sounding start. It's very tasteful, and at this point, the guitar solo kicks in, and I'm hearing Dire Straits. Now, Stephen might love Dire Straits because another thing in the 1980s is obviously Brothers in Arms was one of the biggest albums in the 1980s. You know, Mark Knopfler and his family will never have to work again. You know, there'll be people in 2 years' time that are still living off, you know, that album. But before that, the album Love Over Gold, that's a prog album. I like that album, and it's got a certain sound to it, and that's what I can hear here. And I'll be interesting to know whether Love Over Gold's another album, like a secret one for Stephen, which is an early introduction for him to progressive rock stuff. It drops down, and there's a funkiness. I really think that proper prog, if you go and listen to King Crimson or Genesis or Yes, those bands were funky. They had a groove to them. And I think that's been lost from modern progressive rock. If you go and listen to my band Rain, one of the ideas of that is to bring the funk back into prog. You know, because, you know, once you've got funk and prog, then we've got frog. And frog is where it's at. You know, I want to go down in history as the person that really codified as a genre of frog. I want more funk. You know, this is one of my criticisms of Stephen Wilson. You know, don't fear the funk, don't fear the dark grooves. You know, we want more funk, less dad rock. There's beautiful production. There's a great orchestral touches here. We've got the same 4 chords going round and round. That's a contemporary pop, you know, songwriting method at the moment. Nick Beggs kicked in, and that kicks my interest up, and he does an incredible Chapman stick solo. I would say, actually, this might be one of the definitive Chapman stick solos. It's just unbelievable. It's really incredible. What a man. Nick Beggs, what a man. And suddenly we're into those Stephen Wilson spiralling chords, and we're off on a journey, and I'm back. You've got me back again. I feel at this point I'm starting to spot the methodology of this album, and I'm starting to feel this ebb and flow between the sort of wanting to be Kate Bush kick inside and wanting to be Jeff Waymore, the world's prog. That's the big, you know, and it's all shot through sort of 90s Warp Records aesthetic. That's what we've got going here. And we've got another voiceover. I love it. I love voiceover. So you got a voiceover, that's prog, isn't it? And this is where I at this point I thought, and I've written it down, there's a feeling of the future as seen through the eyes of the child of the 70s. It embodies nostalgia and bewilderment at waking up over 50 years old and realising the existential situation that you're in as you are that close to death, and you look back on what you've done, and questioning whether that very existential angst that you have, that 90s postmodernist existential angst that you genuinely have at this age. When I say you, I'm not on about you, Steve, I'm on about us all of your age, but it does apply to you as well. So this 90s postmodernist existential angst, whether that very thing in itself is outdated and uncool, right? That is what I think this album's about. This album, seriously, and it's worthy and worth doing, it seriously mines the subject of middle-aged creative relevance. And I think really, because you've got what the artist wants it to be about, and then with music, and this is why I think the duty of my review is to really get what's under the surface of this, and it really is, for me, exploring the possibility of being a creatively relevant person when you're in your 50s. Gave that 8 out of 10. So if I now have, because I know your proggers like it, you know I was going through the score. I haven't used the superiometer, this is my score. Superiometer, I didn't want to get involved in this. So if you add all that up now, we get 7.7 out of 10. Nearly 8 out of 10. So this I would describe as a really great album. When I add all this up talking down, because that was when I wrote that down when I was listening, now I've talked through it, I think overall the stuff that I don't like could well be essential, because I think there's these two elements which could be personified by Kate Bush, a proggy but creative artist that's having hit records, and then War of the Worlds, which is very commercial but full on progressive rock. Those are the two wants, and Stephen Wilson's trying to harmonise those on this album, and that is perhaps the harmony codex, is to be able to pull those two things. If you step back, you might say, it's like creativity versus commerciality, but I think there's something much more defined, and I've tried to explain it on this nearly hour-long review. Why have I talked so long about this? Because everything that he is dealing with is relevant to me as well as an artist, and my sort of career, which has been nowhere near as successful as Stephen's, has landed me at a point where I have now become no longer a drummer in bands. I'm a YouTuber. That's what I am now most well known for, which is a surprise. And even this is still a very tiny, drop in the ocean. But in terms of me personally, the amount of people this video will reach is way greater than any record I can make. But in this channel becoming a success, now people are going to listen to my music now. And then you start to wonder how relevant you are, and the question of whether someone my age is relevant, and this is the most stupid thing of it all, of whether my audience being my age and me making music and talking about stuff which is of interest of that age group, which is of course the age group that has extra wealth and knowledge, experience, all that type of thing. Why is this not relevant? Why is it a bunch of kids that have been grown up in the TikTok era that are listening to songs that are churned out on TikTok, which are about 5 seconds long in terms of their musical material? And there's nothing wrong with that, but why do we have to have that as being the touchstone of being cultural relevance? Now, there's a reason in the rock and roll era that was the case, because young people, with the advent of postmodernism and the want to be able to open up culturally to voices we hadn't heard, open up, what the gay people, what the black people think, What do transgender people think? Let's open up the world to all these new voices, and that's something that came out. And the most predominant one, because they was looking towards the future, was the view of young people. And anybody who grew up in the era that me and Stephen Wilson did will know that idea of being a young person and your view of the world was really culturally relevant, right? I don't think it is anymore, right? The postmodernist era has passed us by, right? And so, is there a grain of truth in what Stephen Wilson's seeing and saying? You know, when he's making this stuff, should we just discount it because it's an old bloke? Or is there actually something really creatively worthwhile? And I think that in itself is a question that goes through Stephen Wilson's mind all the time. I'm pretty sure. If he doesn't, I want to know what world is he living in. You know, I'm pretty sure that he is knowing enough that is there. My answer is yes. This is where your album is futuristic. We need to rebalance these ideas now. We need to open ourselves up to the voices again, which aren't being listened to, which in this case is white working class people. We can see that politically with what's going on, without a doubt. Old people. Like me and Stephen. Us old people. Listen to us! It's the voice of the old people! What happened? What bands like the Sex Pistols anymore? No one's listening to me? I've got to the end of the video now. God, that's a long one, wasn't it? Nearly an hour long reviewing an album. It's got to be a great album. Stephen, if you're watching, it's a great album. Absolutely brilliant. This and the Avenged Sevenfold album, Life is But a Dream, they are my two best albums of this year so far, with Noah Forever album coming up underneath. That's a great album as well. They're my three favourite albums, just to prove I do listen to new music. Not much, because I'm an old bloke and I'm quite happy, you know, listening to my Led Zepp albums and Miles Davis albums. I don't need to go and listen to new stuff, do I? Right, and neither do you. But if you are brave enough to go and listen to something that's new, right, go and check out Stephen Wilson's album, The Harmony Codex, right? I've had 2 listens to it, and I have got a lot out of it. And that thing, you know, I've decided to review the album. I don't think I would have sat down and listened to a new album, except that I wanted to do a review of it. That's exactly why I did it, you know. I thought, I'll do a review of this, you know, I've got to have a listen to it. Sitting down and listening to an album all the way through is another old man thing, isn't it? And give it the time so that you have a profound realisation and shift in your view of the world, which is what I've had. That's another old man thing. Come on, us old men, it's not all bad. Us white middle class old men, we're not that bad really. Come on, give us a chance, everybody. Just give us a chance. That's all we want. That's all we're asking for, is a fair share of the pie. You know, I know we've done our jobs and we bought our houses at the right time. We got a ton of money stuck there and we've got, you know, wealth, and you think we're privileged, but we're not, because we haven't got a voice. Give us us old white middle class voice. Give us a voice. I ain't got any money. You know, I'm as poor as a church mouse. That's why my YouTube channel has the aesthetic values it does. I can't afford a good camera, a microphone, and I mean, this is my laptop. Look at it. This is what I'm working with. This is about 100 years old. It's only just about to go. That's what I've got, right? And so if you're now feeling sorry for me because I'm a white middle class, you know, middle-aged Englishman, with no voice and no cultural relevance and also no money. This is the worst thing. So if you feel sorry for me now, because I know there's a lot of other middle-aged men watching this channel, and you've got a bit of spare wealth, haven't you? And you know, so it's not fair being me. You know, so if you want to just give me money for no reason out of sympathy, I have a PayPal tip jar there, so just go click on that and give me some money. Lots of people are, and I'm feeling, this is why I'm a bit more happy. I'm going to get a bit of extra cash coming in now, and this is why, you know, I can spend a bit more time on my YouTube videos. And if you want to really support me, go over to Patreon and become a Patreon. And if you like this video, like it, subscribe, ring the notification bell. Right, we're coming up to the hour, and because I'm a prog anal retentive prog fan, I like things to stop on the hour. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.